Hey there, welcome to Board Game Hot Takes. My name's Tim.
And this is Chris.
This is Adam.
And today we're going to be finishing our series on our top 50 games of all time for 2024 with our top 10. This is going to be numbers 1 through 10. This is always our biggest episode of the year. And so I'm sure there's going to be a lot of new people listening to us for the first time. If you are, welcome to the show. Stick with us for a couple episodes or go back and try a couple more and get to know us a little bit. We'd love to keep you around and have you join our community. If you'd like to interact with us outside of the podcast or our YouTube channel, you can find us on Blue Sky. You can also find our Facebook group, Board Game Hot Takes. And you can find us on patreon.com/Board Game Hot Takes, where, and in fact, this very week, we're doing a board game giveaway. Every month we give away a board game to one of our friend of the show level supporters. And this is going to be a choice from a list. Adam's got about 10 games that he wants to give away. So whoever wins this we're going to be picking tonight, in fact. So next week we'll announce the winner, but they'll get to pick from about 10 board games that we'll send out to you. And then last month, we had a friend of the show, Seth Gonzalez, won Sleeping Gods Distant Skies in our monthly giveaway. So join us there. If you want to check out more of this series, we started this 3 weeks before. We did number 11 through 20 last week, number 21 through 30 the week before that, and number 31 through 40 the week before that. And on that episode, we talked a lot about how we came up with our list and how we picked the games we did. But we also have a Patreon exclusive episode for any of our super fan supporters or above that gives us your top 41 through 50. So with that all said, we're going to jump right in here, get to what you're actually here for, which is to hear about the top 10 games of all time, actually the top 30, because each of us is going to give our top 10 tonight. And we're going to start out with number 10.
Well, I'm super excited about this one because, I mean, like you said, this is always our biggest episode, and so there's always a little bit of excitement around that. And this year, I was actually a little bit surprised when I watched all of my games shake out, from the Pub Meeple rankings. I was even surprised because there's a few, old standards in there. There's some old friends, but there's also some completely new games. There's some games I haven't really talked about a whole lot. There's even a couple games in there that I didn't even love all that much at first blush. So I was a little shocked. It's going to be fun talking about them today and maybe exploring that a little bit and seeing, how these surprises ended up popping in there. And I'm actually going to start with one of those. My number 10 is Apiary, designed by Connie Vogelman and published by Stonemaier Games. This is one that we played in a review a little while back, and I liked it. I didn't dislike it, but I also felt like it was a little bit, like it didn't blow me away. I wasn't super excited by playing it, but then we got to play number 2, and this is one of those rare instances where I had a dramatically different experience with play number 2 than I had from play number 1. And I think it's always kind of a phenomenon that, once there's some games when you understand them a little bit better, and you're able to put together a little bit more of a strategy, you get more of the sense of satisfaction from playing that game. This was clearly one for me. I didn't really get the strategy in game number 1, but I got it in game number 2, and that opened it all up for me completely. In particular, it made it so that I was able to pay less attention to am I doing this right? Do I need to do this? Do I need to do that? How do I manipulate these different mechanisms? And actually focus a little bit as well on the theme of this game, which I think is absolutely top notch. That's another one where when it started, I was like, Space Bees? I don't know. But once I played it a second time, the delightful artwork in this game combined with the heavily meshed thematics and mechanics and the relatively intuitive rule set that comes with this game, I'm a lot more excited about it now. We played that the second time up in Big Bear, and I'm dying to get this one played again. And I'm really interested to see if this one ends up on my list in a high position next year like it's doing this year.
Well, Chris, interesting to see you've combed through all your games, and Apiary's land at number 10 here. You alluded to it being upcoming on your list in the last few weeks that we've talked about it. You talked about the strategy and catching on to that in your second play. This is one that I still haven't caught onto the strategy, and I want to go back and I want to figure out that strategy and try to catch up with you guys. Nice pick here, Apiary.
Yeah, Apiary was my number 23, so I talked about it a couple of weeks ago. And yeah, very surprised to see it this high, Chris, because I do know that you enjoyed that last play of it. But considering how mediocre you were on the first play, I didn't expect it this high in your list. That's really cool. I love this game. You played it twice. I played it probably 7 or 8 times at this point, and still really enjoying this game. Can't wait to go back to it. There is an expansion coming out for it this year, and can't wait to check that one out as well. So
yeah, this is one of those situations where it's fun doing it by the pub meeple method, because when you actually put these games head to head, seeing which ones you really want to play, and so that's why it was a bit of a surprise to me. So excellent use of pub meeple.
I do have a bone to pick with you on your rankings, and I told listeners to go back to the 4 episodes back to the 31 to 40 ranking and hear how we ranked them, but this episode is called the Top Games of All Time episode, right? The series, it's top 40 games of all time. And yet Chris started out the series by saying, I take issue with that name. This is actually the games I want to play right now. Well, Chris, I take issue with you taking issue with that name, because I think you should have just actually picked the top 40 games of all time. And we could have done a different episode on the top 10 games you want to play right now or something like that.
Well, I take issue with the issue that you take with my taking issue with that issue to begin with. So take that, Tim.
We had a listener that commented and they're like, hey, some people were complaining, like, what how are you picking these games? Listen, one of our listeners jumped in and they said, this is your list. Do whatever you want to with it. We just enjoy listening. And I'm on board with that. Do whatever you want to with it. But they also had a really fun comment. They said, instead of just picking the game you want to play right now, instead look at those 2 games and say, of the 2, if one was going to be lost forever, which one is it going to be? And that, I think, is probably closer to how I approached my own list. But I think that's a really good way. If we could kind of align on that next year, maybe, and we could actually do the top games of all time, I think that'd be a fun series and see how closely it matches.
Yeah. And just one other thought on that, because I get it. I mean, that's a legitimate comment, and I can understand why someone would ask that question. And it does seem a little bit strange, but realistically, if you were going to change your top, I don't know, 50, 30, 20, whatever games of all time every year, that would assume that there are a lot of new games coming out that are jumping into that list or bumping other things off the list every year. And that's just not realistic. So I think we're sort of left, if we're going to do something like this, doing something where the rules are maybe a little bit more flexible, which is how I interpret it, but I do get the point.
Yeah, we don't follow rules around here. I get it. It's totally fine.
We're very anti-authoritarian.
Anyway, I'm going to talk about my number 10 game.
Oh, fine, Adam. Go for it.
Is this really the number 10 game of all time, though, Adam? Or
I don't even know anymore.
Is it really just the number 10 game you felt like playing this week?
Right, Adam? It's just an arbitrary list now. I'm just going to throw some games up there and talk about them. So I kind of went with the Chris method of the games I want to play right now. But yeah, I like that idea of games I can't live without. I think that would be a different list if I had to put the games that I couldn't live with, top 40 games I couldn't live without, top 50 games. Anyway, these are awesome games. In my top 10, I'm excited to talk about them. Number 10 for me is Battle for Rokugan, designed by Tom Jolly and Molly Glover, Fantasy Flight Games. It's no longer in print. I don't know if it'll ever come back in print. Somehow, Tim found a copy for $5, $10. Amazingly, nice job with that. But this is one, I brought it to a few of our little get-togethers, a few of our little meetups, and I wasn't super sure on the rules, even though there's only like 1 page of rules. And so we kind of ignored it for a little while, and we finally played it, and it was a huge success, especially for me. I loved it. Not successful that I was any good at the game, but it was a fun game. We all enjoyed it, I think. Everybody had a lot of fun. Chris and Steve were battling out, or some little island was totally insignificant, and then Tim was just crushing me all over the middle of the board. But this is a beautiful game. You have just some simple components. There's chits everywhere. I talk about this one being super chitty. So you have all these little circles everywhere, big pile that you're going to grab some of those behind your screen. The little asymmetric powers. Everybody's clan has a different little power that they can do. And what you're doing, you're putting, 5, 6 of these chits in turn order out there on the map. Some of them are attacking. Some of them are defensive. Some of them are essentially like a blow up this whole entire land. Some of them are like a little secret spy. You can go in and raid somebody's territory. And so you have all these different little chits. And everybody has the same stuff, but you don't know what order that's going to come out in. So it's fun. And then at the end of that round, you have the reveal. Everybody flips their chits over and you resolve it. And you see what happens, how things all shake out. So it's quick. It's 5 rounds. There's a couple little bonuses here. There's a a region control, which Chris just vanished, and a territory control. If you have territory control, you get to grab these little cards that give you another little bonus, and then those are gone for the rest of the game. And those are variable. I think there's 3 per territory, something like that. So that spices it up a little bit. But anyway, this is one I'm glad we finally got to play. You guys let me explain it to you, and we went through the motions. Battle for Rokugan, my number 10 game of all time that I can't live without, or that I want to play right now. I don't even know, but it's a great game.
Yeah, this was my number 32 on our list a couple of weeks back, and this is one of the 3 games on my list that I have only played once, and I made this clarification last week that I only did this with a few games that I loved so much that I have acquired them, even though, or, you know, at least pre-ordered them or whatever, because I know that I'm going to want to play them more. So, you know, I feel like that's a little shady to put games on our list that we've only played once, but I'll make an exception, and this was one of the exceptions. I had one of my favorite gameplays of all time, so I can't wait to get back to this some more now that I own a copy of it.
So shady.
I think that's a dramatic use of the word shady. I mean, Tim,
So shady.
Tim is very, very strict on rules when he feels like it.
Right. He's cracking down. He's cracking down on
Seriously,
his top
I don't
40,
know.
50 lists. This is getting hard.
Ugh.
Well, I got to say, so when I was making my list this year, I was a little worried because the last 2 years, my top 10 only shifted. I think one game was different on the 2 years. And so I was really worried that this is going to get
That's boring,
stagnant.
Tim. That's
Nobody's,
so boring. No
nobody's going to want to come back and listen to this show every year if they're getting the same exact list. And I was also starting to wonder, am I just becoming one of those old guys that just like settled into their favorite games? These are the best games of all time, and I'll never play anything new. And Chris, like, yeah, that's me. But I was worried. I was just getting worried, or not worried, I guess, but just that makes it a little less exciting to explore it and to have fun in a hobby when you feel like you're kind of settled in and you've made your decisions. So I was very excited to see this year when I did my Pulp Meeple ranking that my top 10 is very different. It has quite a few games that you have never heard me talk about on one of these lists before, or shifted a lot on this list. But I'm going to start with a game that is not one of those. It's a game I've talked about every year. I think it's been on my top 10 or near it every year. This is the Castles of Burgundy by Stefan Feld. I think it was like 10 last year, maybe 11. I still love this game. I play it all the time. Of course, I've got the special edition, which came out this year, and there's some really remarkable production updates to it that makes it very nice. But I think it could have risen more if they had also fixed some of the iconography issues with it. I do feel the new version, the iconography is a little harder to process, and that's frustrating. So I actually have almost more fun playing the old crappy version of it, believe it or not. But anyway, still great that the new production exists for new people to discover and not have to look at that old one. The Castles of Burgundy, a great Stefan Feld classic. I played probably 15 Stefan Felds at this point. This one's still my favorite. I'm still looking for that next. I enjoy all of his games. I haven't played one that I really didn't like yet, but Castles of Burgundy remains my favorite, even though it was the first one I ever discovered. So still up here on my number 10.
I think this is a great pick, Tim. And honestly, I'd love to play your fancy upgraded version of this one. But I mean, realistically, with this group, with Adam over there, when is that ever going to happen?
I'll play this game. I'll suck it up for the most miserable 3 to 4 hours of my life.
I think Adam would actually like playing this game if we sat down, taught it to him, explain the icons as they came out. I think he'd have. I feels like this game has the types of decisions Adam actually likes, like this little, oh, Tim wants that, I'm going to go in and take that from him. I just think Adam hasn't had the right place, it just hasn't been in the right situation for him to enjoy Castles of Burgundy.
All right. Well, remains to be seen. We'll have to put that theory to the test and see if it actually plays out.
We'll see how many situations I cannot enjoy Castles of Burgundy. Before we find the right one.
What's the tally at now? At least 2 or 3, I guess.
Yeah, like 5 or 6, I think.
All right, and that brings us to game number 9, which I'll call this one an old friend. I went from a new friend to an old friend. Oh, this one is not only is it on my list for, I think, the second year in a row, but it actually took a pretty significant jump. Last year it was around number 20, and this year it's coming in at number 9, which says a lot, in a list like this. That is Agricola by Uwe Rosenberg and published by Lookout Games. I still cannot, for the life of me, understand why I enjoyed this game so much. because not only is it the most bland of all possible themes, with the possible exception of Smartphone Inc. and Xenon Profiteer, both of which I also like quite a bit, but it's got this feed your people aspect that I don't think anybody actually really likes. It just adds tension, which I guess is, important in a game. But the artwork is kind of bland Clemens Franz artwork. And yet there's something about the economy of this game. There's something about the actions of this game. And, as always, it's something about the way the theme of this game ties in with the mechanics of this game that keeps me coming back. The more I play Uwe Rosenberg games, the more I like them, and the more I'm looking to expand out and play more of his games. In fact, I just played Glass Road for the first time. Ooh. And it's somewhat inexplicable to me, and yet I do love this game. I'm also terrible at it. Tim, I think you made the comment that the easiest wins you ever have are when you play against me at Agricola. I think that's probably true of anybody who's ever played Agricola against me. It's so easy to beat on me that it must make anybody feel really good. It is a hard game, and I just don't have the killer instinct in this one. I mean, maybe in some area control games I can muster some killer instinct, but in this one I just can't do it. I have a hard time with it. But I love that intense puzzle of not only trying to figure out what's the next thing that's going to score me the most points, but what is the next thing that's not going to get taken away from me by the other players. And that, to me, is one of the things that sets this game apart. Not only great game, not only great mechanisms, not only great tie-in between the mechanisms and the theme, but a great addition of intense player interaction in a resource management Euro-style game. Agricola, number 9.
Well, Chris, this is one I haven't played enough to really come to a consensus on it, but I'm sure I'm worse than you at Agricola. So if you ever want someone to beat up on, you can invite me to a game of this, and I'll happily blunder my way through this one and try to figure out what's going on Agricola.
Thanks, Adam.
After we recently discussed this game on the top 5 games we suck at episode, and Chris mentioned this one, we did play a game together, and Chris held his own pretty close. I still snuck out a win, but it wasn't a big win. So I think you're getting better, Chris. I'm going to sneak in here because even though it is Adam's turn to do his number 9, my number 9 is also Agricola. I think this is our first double crossover at the exact same number spot.
Nice.
So Agricola, I think, was number 9 on my list last year as well. And it was a big jump because it wasn't even on my list previous years, even though I'd played it years ago. It's just had a resurgence for me. And I still love playing this game every single time I play it. Fantastic. My number 1 Uwe Rosenberg game on my list, but my number 9 game of all time.
I'm going to add one thing in addition to what I've already said. And that is, this game is also different to me in that almost every game that I really enjoy, I love the addition of more cards, like more stuff, more options, more diversity in the game. This is one where I've played, especially on BGA, with a lot of these expansion cards, the expansion professions, or what am I forgetting the name?
The occupations and the minor upgrades. Yeah.
Yep. And when you add in a lot of the new expansion stuff, it actually makes it a slightly weaker game, I think, because they really hit the sweet spot with the original cards, and there was a lot of them. So the new ones, I don't think actually add that much. So my actually preferred way to play this one is with the original base game.
All right.
Chris, since you talked about it, just really quickly, first thoughts on Glass Road. I haven't played it, so should I check it out?
I haven't. Well, actually, I said I played it. I'm in the middle of a game on BGA, okay. So I'll talk about that in a future episode. But my guess is going to be the answer is yes.
Great.
All right. Well, I'm going to caveat my number 9 here with a little preamble. You might hear Ada, my 3-year-old daughter. She is on fire tonight. She's feisty every night. But you might hear her running around. She might make a guest appearance at some point. So apologies if you're hearing a excited, emotional 3-year-old run around in the background. That has nothing to do with my number 9, which is Ankh, Gods of Egypt. This is by Eric Lang and CMON or Come On Games. This is a game, I like it for many, many reasons. Most of all, the unique action selection, which is very cool. Check that out if you haven't seen it. It's this weird action selection from top to bottom. You know, you can pick down at the bottom, the lowest one, but then you only get one action. So you want to start at the top before you take one of the lower actions. And then there's this track that you move along to. So there's an arc to it. You're going to put out a few monuments. You're going to cut the map up into these different pieces. So the game evolves over time as you're playing it. It works well at 2 players. So if you don't have a lot of friends like me, that's no problem. All you need is one friend. Hopefully you got that. Sorry if you don't. And what else? The combat is pretty neat too. So it's kind of like Rising Sun, where you have these different regions, 1 through whatever, but you can rearrange the number of the regions, and that might have some sort of advantage or not. And you have the cards where, you keep playing a card, you're going to go, what card are you going to use in region 1? What card are you going to region 2? Maybe region 4, you're going to play the card that lets you take all your cards back. So you're strong in region 5 and region 6 again. So a lot of thought, a lot of decisions going into everything here. You could put any theme on this game and it's still exceptionally solid. The mechanisms here are fantastic. There's all these beautiful miniatures in this one too, that I've tried to paint. I need to learn how to paint because I've ruined a couple of the miniatures from Ankh by trying to paint them. So I need to, fix that, learn how to paint some miniatures, make this game look beautiful again. They look okay. No, they look pretty gross. They're pretty bad. So I need to fix it. Anyway, aside from horrible miniatures, this game is absolutely fantastic. Good miniatures that I ruined. This game is absolutely fantastic. Ankh, Gods of Egypt.
So now that's one of the visuals. Now that we've got this on YouTube, you should have brought in and showed us one of those really ugly miniatures up on.
I'll do it. I'm gonna go off screen for a second. I'll let you guys chit chat.
Yeah, Ankh is really interesting. Something about the combat feels a little dry to me, but I keep wanting to go back to it. I do like the action selection, like Adam said, this interesting choice of picking 2 actions unless you get to the end of one of these rows and you trigger this little other track that moves and gives you a different type of bonus. So it's always this interesting thing, like, do I want to set someone else up for that bonus, or good choices there. And I like the card play generally, so I don't know why this one hasn't hit for me too much. I do think the merge mechanism is a very cool thing that you don't see I've never seen anything like that in another game. I've got a few local friends that are wanting to get this played, so I'll probably get another play of this soon, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to playing this one again too. I mean, we haven't played it in a couple of cons. I mean, it's been quite a while, so I think we're maybe 3 cons back is the last time we did, and I really would like to play this one again. I find the combat particularly interesting, even though you said it was a little bit dry, Tim. I don't find it that way. I like that kind of combat where you have sort of competing. That didn't look so bad.
Looks good, Adam.
It does look totally good.
Fine. I mean, your camera's not high resolution here or anything.
I know,
so it's hard to tell, but
it's not focusing. But
no,
it looks better than just
cool.
the plain one. Yeah. I'm in on it. Looks good.
Yeah. The card play on that is fun. It's an exciting way of doing combat. It's also one of the things that you can do in this game that I think is kind of cool is that you can do things that are not necessarily directly combat related during combat by playing certain cards, which is a fun little twist. And I'm just always blown away, regardless of whether I like the game, don't like the game, love the game, hate the game. Everything Eric Lang does is interesting. His combat mechanisms are always exciting to see. Even if I don't like the game itself, still dig the combat.
Yeah. I am still upset that this was the one game. I was finally going to get one game won in Long Beach 2 years ago, and then that stupid merge, you guys knocked me out right at the last minute.
The merge came back to bite us, Tim. We were both fighting it out, and then we got slaughtered by it.
And I was the one complaining about the merge, right? And
took advantage of it. No, I think it's a cool mechanism, even if it can shift the game around a little bit. I thought it was cool. Cool example of it there. Well, I said my number 9, so
yeah.
And there's a mysterious Sarah
on camera. There we go.
Yeah. All right,
Chris. Yeah, you're up.
That brings us to number 8. Number 8 is an old friend that hasn't actually changed that much. This game is in almost exactly the same position it was in on my list last year, and it deserves to stay in that same high spot. It's Eclipse, Second Dawn for the Galaxy, designed by Tuco Takokallio and published by Lautapellet.fl. What can I say about Eclipse Second Dawn that hasn't already been said 1,000 times by us on this show? It is the premier 4X game in my mind. This one, I think I truly can say that at least in terms of 4X games, this is, and probably always will be, my number 1 4X game. And it is probably also one I would list in my top 10 of best games of all time, regardless of whether I was talking about playing now or actually really talking about best games of all time. So I'm thrilled to have this one on the list. It's got exciting combat. It's got a diverse set of different kinds of dice chucking it really does add some fun in it, even though it adds a lot of sadness if you don't do so good in the dice chucking. But the dice chucking is still fun. The combat is great. The ability to build out your ships in very, very different and interesting ways, and having 4 different ships where you can do that, and it just the differences in the asymmetric factions, all of that stuff just adds up to an absolutely top-notch 4X game. I can't think of a way that you could actually improve upon the 4X formula beyond what has been done in Eclipse Second Dawn. So I have a feeling this one is just going to stay on my list forever. So, and I'm okay with that. So Eclipse Second Dawn for the Galaxy, staying strong.
You could improve on it by removing the dice rolls, because they suck.
Nope. Dice rolls are exciting. Maybe take
pick.
out the dice rolls and adding bag pulls.
Yeah. It's a great pick, Chris. I am going to talk about this one upcoming on this episode.
You didn't talk about Eclipse already this year?
No, I didn't talk about Eclipse.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I probably got confused. I went back this week and listened to last year's top 10 list just to kind of refresh my memory on what I had on there. Maybe you had on your list last year. I think it was at the top of the list. Maybe. I gotcha. Can't remember. All right. My number 8 this year is a new one to me. It's not a brand new game, though. This is Pulsar 2849 by Vladimir Suchi. And I played this with you guys recently. And this game just it's blowing my mind. I'm having so much fun with it. I've had 3 or 4 plays now at this point. I think it's a very tight dice drafting game with a sci-fi theme, and the dice drafting is very interactive. You're basically, the great thing about this, one of the cool things, you roll a handful of dice, the dice get placed on their, based on kind of, what their numbers are, and then whatever the average of those is, you kind of put a marker there, and anything you buy to the right of that, you get negative, like a negative effect. Everything you choose to the left of that, which is typically lower numbers, you're going to get a positive effect. And so it gives you a really interesting choice of, do I take the smaller dice and get a really great, a bump up, get some extra resources or potential points, or do I take the higher dice, which may give you, some new options, and take a negative with it. Really cool dice draft in this. But it feels like you don't get to do that much. You draft 2 dice per round, and it's played over, 8 rounds or something like that. And you get to place those 2 dice. But somehow you can get a lot done. You guys didn't get a lot done in our last play, but you can get a lot done when you get to know this game a little bit. You're exploring the galaxy. You're inventing all these cool techs. And I have a great time with this. I think it's a really challenging and interesting puzzle, one that I think there's a lot of opportunity to get better at. And I can't wait to keep playing it. So I think Pulsar 2849 is a really exceptional game.
I want to like this game more than I do. I liked it. I didn't love it. And I think part of it is because of what you said, Tim, that it doesn't feel like you actually get a chance to do all that much. It feels like you have to pick a couple things you want to do. Or maybe you don't. Maybe I just didn't know what the heck I was doing. But I didn't feel like I was able to do anything like the amount of stuff that I wanted to do. But I did like some of the mechanisms. I like the dice drafting. I always think dice drafting is fun. So I'd totally give this one another shot.
I'm going to say we just played it the one time, Chris, and I felt like I couldn't get anything done either. You said it, Tim. We didn't get anything done. There was a bunch of things I wanted to do, and I feel like that with a lot of Vladimir Suchi games, I can't get anything done that I want to do. I can get about 30% of 10 different things done that I want to get done. So I don't know how. Yeah, I'm going to go back to this one and see what's there. Also, for being such a stickler for the rules, Tim, you don't seem to care about skipping my turn for number 8. So I'm going to talk about my number 8 pick.
Oh, shoot. got out of order here.
My number 8 pick is Soul Last Days of a Star. This is a fantastic game that you guys hate or you can't stand, or maybe Chris is on the fence on it, but Tim just does not enjoy this one for who knows why. But this is a great game. I've had a couple plays recently with Sarah, so at 2 players, this game works pretty well. First time we played, we did the vestigial structures, which kind of gets the game going a little faster, and there's 1 less suit in the game, so 1 less superpower, 1 less power, which really you're leaving a lot out. The powers are what make the game super fun. So the more suits you have, the more different little powers or abilities that you get to do as the game goes on. So, you build a structure in one of the rings around this dying star, and then that lets you draw these cards depending on which level, how close to the center of the star you are. You draw these different suits out, which is also the timer for the game. You get to keep 1, and that gives you the power. So you're kind of setting yourself up with this little power that's going to help you do this little thing with your little sun divers, which you use to build the structures, which may give you maybe more energy, or which will give you more sun divers, or which will give you more momentum. And the momentum is what you need to have the most of when the last solar flare, which is one of the suits also in the deck, when the last solar flare of 13 comes out and the sun explodes. You can escape the star and fly your civilization off to a new star and set up, and then you can start fighting over resources of that star there too. Anyway, Last Days of a Star. I love this one. I owned it previously, sold it because I knew the Kickstarter was coming out. I had to wait like 3 years between selling it and getting this one back. I'm glad I have it back. I absolutely love this game. A little abstracty, but it's super quick, light rules, great player interaction. That's why it's my number 8 game of all time.
I really like the box cover on Soul.
Tim, you didn't have to say anything if you didn't want to.
I really like it.
I do want to comment on the production because I feel like it's been long enough since I've played the game itself that I can't really remember enough about the specifics of the mechanics, other than to say that at the time, I don't think Tim or I liked it very much, but I think it's warmed a little bit in my mind since, and I do want to try it again to see if we were being fair to it the first time. But in terms of the visuals of this game, I can say this, that visually, this game is striking. And that's, that's pretty big praise considering that it is a highly abstracted game visually. So I think that the way that it was handled was exceptionally well done. Even the little pieces that are, very abstract pieces, the sun divers and the transmission towers and all that, abstract, but really cool looking in a way that I thought was extremely effective and made this game somewhat mesmerizing, I thought.
Yeah. To be fair, I did play it several times, not just once, Chris. So that's your first, your hot take. This was a very dedicated and planned out review that I was just giving to it.
2 or 3 times?
Three times. 3 whole times. 2 more than I wanted to.
Oh. So is it my turn now, or are we like switching up that order? Do we have an order anymore? I mean, are we abiding by orders? Okay. That gets us to number 7. And I am going to throw out my second Uwe Rosenberg game of the night. It's A Feast for Odin, which is designed by Uwe Rosenberg and published by Furlan Spiel. The fact that I've got games like this in Agricola on my top 10 list suggests that so many things can change in one's life over the course of a couple of years in a hobby. And this is, again, a little bit shocking to me, looking back and thinking how I looked at games a couple of years ago. But philosophy aside on that, A Feast for Odin is about as sandboxy as you can possibly get in a Euro-style resource management game. I mean, it's got this huge grid of worker placement spaces with, I don't know how many it is, but it's 1,000 different routes you can try to pursue to victory, largely driven by just whatever way you want to proceed, and or if you get particular occupation cards that drive you toward one particular thing or another, then you can just go for it. You can go and do whatever it is that you want to do. You can get sheeps and cows. You can build out your grid where you're putting polyominoes out and trying to fill in the grid to make up a lot of income. You can take ships and raid. You can be a trader and trade goods. I mean, there's just literally a million things that you can do. To the point where when I played it for the first time, I'm like, this game is horrible. How could anybody ever play this game more than once? Because there's too much stuff going on. But now, after a couple of years of playing this game, I just dig it so much. I think even Tim was like, this is too much for me, or I'm bored of it. It's the same thing over and over again, which to me, I think it's absolutely fascinating. The number of things that you can do, the directions that you can go. Sometimes I just go into a game saying, I'm going to do something I've never tried before just because I want to try winning a game by raising sheep. So I'm excited to keep playing this one. I play this game on constant rotation on BGA, and we'll see. We'll see if it sticks around next year, or if it, we'll see how many Uwe Rosenberg games I have on my list next year. Maybe Glass Road will be there too.
All Uwe.
Wouldn't that be ironic?
So this is one, like you said, Chris, I need a little more focus in my games. And this, you have that big mat of, I don't know, 10 by 40, 50. I don't know how many. Some multiple of 4, or I don't know if that's right. There's just a ton, 60 maybe choices. Yeah, something you can do. So I'm like, what am I supposed to do here? I don't know. Give me something to do. Give me a sun to fly around where I can build some little gates and structures and transmission towers. That's easy to me. But here I just get overwhelmed and I don't do anything well. So I haven't mastered this one, and I just don't get good vibes when I play this one. So I stay away.
I am very pleased to say I finally got to try the Norwegians expansion this week, and it's great. And it actually does improve the game drastically, at least on my first play it did. And I'm more excited to go back to this after that. So
how does it improve it?
That's a good question. I'm not sure why, but basically it replaces the worker placement spaces and I think takes away some, so there's not quite as many choices, and makes them a little bit more interesting. The whole fourth column now, if you put workers there, you can put 1 or 2, but you pass after you put them there. And so there's some pretty strong spaces, but basically if you're the first one to go there, then you're passing. If you put 2 workers there, when you pass, you get to play a free occupation card. So it's a little bit easier to get your occupation cards out, which was one of my complaints of the game in the past. The worker placement spaces, there's a little less and they're a little more diverse. And one of the polyomino tiles that they added, and of course you can upgrade it, so it's like, 4 different versions of this polyomino, is a little U-shaped one. So you now have something you can slot onto your board and kind of fit over those income bonuses, which makes it a lot more fun of a puzzle, in my opinion. So everything that I've been seeing with it so far, I've enjoyed this play of it. Maybe it's because just new exploration for me, but I definitely thought that, it felt like the choices were a little bit more interesting, and the race to the different options. It just, maybe just not as many choices was part of it. So I really liked it, and definitely it did. Everyone's told me you got to try it with Norwegians. I bought it. I bought the expansion, but then sold the game without ever playing it, and kind of regret I did now. So we'll see if I keep going back to it.
All right. Well, my number 7, I think it's my turn. Is that right? I don't want to step on his toes here. My number 7 is Shaman. This is just a little card game, really. And what you're doing, you get this hand of cards, and you're trying to deduce who is on your team or who is on not your team, I guess. So what you have in this game is shadows or shamans. And there's a lot more shamans than there are shadows. If you play up to 5 people, then you got 2 shadows. So you're trying to weed these guys out before the shadows can bring this little marker down to the eclipse or a full moon or something. So you have this southwest art. There's vaguely a theme here, but it's beautiful. Whatever the theme is here, it's this kind of reminiscent of southwestern United States art. I think it's gorgeous. The production here is one of the best, I think, for a little card game that I've seen. So you've got some social deduction here. You're trying to figure out who's on whose team, and how are you going to do that? Well, if somebody plays a suit, and if somebody plays offsuit, maybe they have no choice but to play offsuit. That's what marches this little timer down to the moon. So that arouses suspicion right there. Why didn't you follow suit, Adam? Are you a shadow? You must be a shadow. Well, I'm going to close this other suit out. That's going to give me a dagger. Now, once I close out this, or once I play, what is it? Once you play, I don't know, I forget. If you play the lowest card, I think you get to grab a token off the top. And then once you close out that suit, if the token is a dagger, once you close out a dagger suit, then you get to choose who you think is a shadow. That's if you're a shaman. And of course, if you're a shadow, you want to use your dagger to try to get a shaman, and that'll help you get the little timer closer to the moon. Closing out other suits gives you other powers. There's one that lets you switch. So if you're getting close to being found out, you can switch from being a shadow to somebody else that you think is a shaman. So that's a neat little thing there. And then I forget what the other suits do. I think one of them just marches the thing down twice or moves it back up, so you have a little more time if you're the shamans to stay alive while you're trying to figure it out. But what happens, you play a round of this, the winner gets some points. It's going to be like the first one to get, 7 points, 12 points, whatever it is. So people start getting high on these point values. Oh, Chris has 6 points. Now I don't even care if he's on my team, if he's a shadow or a shaman. I just want him to be dead anyway. So you get these weird interactions where maybe you're a shadow helping out a shaman just so Chris doesn't win because you want to win. So you've got some interesting things happening with a beautiful production, a light rules set, and these tokens. I think these tokens and being able to use those and timing it all right, being able to manage your cards so you can close out that suit and be able to do the, I don't know, the ritual of the suit, whatever it's called. It has this goofy name. I think all those mechanisms go into making a fantastic, fun, thrilling game that's Shamans, my number 7 game of all time.
So why has it got to be Chris always that you're trying to kill in this example that you're...
I just, because look at your face, man. I just want to take you down. That's all.
Turkey.
That's funny. I have some great memories of this, especially playing it out at restaurants with you guys, like right here in Long Beach, playing at Rance's over lunch and playing at Cinzy's over dinner. Just something you can bust out while you're waiting for dinner. I think trick taking is a great hidden game to mix with hidden traders, because you often will say, even to your partner, like, why did you play off suit there? And you don't know whether they just didn't have the right card or whether they're playing against you. And I think someone made a smart choice by blending those two, that chocolate and peanut butter mix.
Yeah, good choice. Good choice. I totally agree with this one. And I don't know that I ever would have thought to put these two mechanisms together, but yeah, it works some kind of magic and you end up with a really good game.
All right. Well, my number 7 is Tapestry by Stonemaier Games and designed by Jamie Stegmaier. Tapestry's been high on my list the last few years. And this is probably, like I've said it in the past, this is a controversial pick because I think a lot of people don't like this game. And I don't understand it exactly, but I understand that some people don't like fun. And I understand that some people don't like randomness in their games. And there is a fair amount of randomness. But what I can tell you is that it's a very competitive game. You get better at this game. There is a lot of strategy with it, and it's fun strategy for me every time. I like finding that mix of cards, the Tapestry cards you're drawing and starting with, trying to mix them with your civilization, trying to make the right moves on the track, trying to sneak just ahead of somebody else and grabbing, on the track and grabbing those little monuments, the landmarks, and filling in the puzzle on your board and getting that one extra resource to get one more turn out of that era, out of that round. I have a great time with this every time I play it, all the time. Chris and I are playing a game right now on Board Game Arena, and I've got several others going as well. It's fantastic. Tapestry is my number 7.
It's a great game, other than when someone sneaks ahead of you and grabs up a monument when you're just ready to get it, like Tim did today. So I'm feeling a little bit salty about this game right now for that very reason.
And this is Chris's favorite thing to do. He does it to me all the time, but the rare time that I manage to get clever enough and do it to him, now he's pissed about it.
Did you guys find this game plays best at 2 players, 3, 4? Does it work well at any?
I think it works great at every. I think it can go long at more player counts. So I think my favorite, honestly, is 2 to 3. 3 adds a little bit more interest just because you got more people racing up those tracks. But I think it's fun at 2. I played at 2 all the time, and I always have a good time with it. So 2 or 3 for me.
I agree. I think that's right.
Yeah, but it plays fine at 4. It's just that there's some turns can go long, so there's like downtime is going to stretch. Yeah. And for me, to be honest, you know my thoughts on this. 3 is almost always the right player count for everything. Sure. Go more than that, and you're just spending more time around the table without getting a lot of value out of it.
Plus, there are some things that you can only do once, like only one person can do, like getting those monuments. And to me, a big part of the fun in this game is racing for those monuments. And so, if you're only able to get 1 or 2, I think that makes it a little bit less fun. So I do think I would stick to 2 or 3 rather than 4. But yeah, I mean, not to say that the game would not be enjoyable at 4. It just reduces the access to one of my favorite parts of the game.
Okay.
So that brings us to number 6. And I think this one is going to surprise you a little bit. Not that I liked it, but that it's this high on my list. And it's a game that I think, if I'm remembering right, both of you talked about already. It's Voidfall. Designed by Nigel Buckle and David Turksey and published by Mind Clash Games. This is a game I did not expect to see this high on the list. Honestly, I never expected any Mind Clash game to appear this high on one of my lists. But we played an absolutely fascinating round of this game in Big Bear a couple of months ago, and I have not been able to get this game out of my mind since. Now, I will give the caveat that there are a lot of things that suggest against playing this game at any given time. There's a ton of setup. It's a long game. I'll say it a second time. There's a ton of setup. There is a lot of setup in this game. I mean, we spent an evening setting this game up. So it's not likely to get played a ton. But if you told me I could just step in and play a game, someone else is going to do all the setup, and all I've got to do is play. I mean, there is so much interesting stuff going on in this game that it's great. There's so much interesting interaction between the theme and what is largely a Euro style set of mechanisms that don't feel anything like Euro resource management mechanisms. It feels like a 4X game. Now, it is. I will say that in terms of 4X overall, I don't think this game is as high as Eclipse in the field. But I do think overall, judging by its place on the list, it's the one that's a little more exciting to me right now, probably because I haven't played this one as much. And it does have a broader scope of things that you're able to do that go beyond Eclipse, which is a little bit more of a pure 4X. So I'm just dying to get this one played again. And you know, maybe again, to the weakness of a list based on games that are hot in your mind right now, we'll see if it shows up again next year on the list or if it's, if it drops. But right now, after the 2 plays that we've had, I am infatuated.
Another great pick. Chris can't argue with this one. But it's not just me who wants to take you down. I think in Voidfall, the game itself wanted to take you down. Yeah. So I'm not the only one going after you. The game, in this case, went after you too.
The Voidborn were like, just look at his face. I just had to go after him.
Look at his face. Yeah, the world says, look at that face.
This does surprise me it's this high for you, Chris, because I'm not sure you had even seemed like you were having that much fun while we were playing it. While Adam was very enthusiastic about it, so it's very neat to see it this high for you. Yeah, I said it when Adam brought it up on his list. The more we're talking about games here, the more I kind of regret that it's not higher. But I do have to weight the fact that it is going to be hard to get played. Now, Chris, you own this game, right?
I do.
Have you thought about trying to set up a gameplay? Do you think you could pull a couple of your friends from one of your local game groups and see if you could get a game played?
No. No, that's just a hard no. Because personally, I don't even want to go through the process of setting this game up and going through all that. Because if I were to do that, I would have to teach it. I would have to set it up. And that is enough of a beatdown that I'm happy to play it once or twice a year with you guys.
That's funny. So yeah, Chris, you did say that, and as a 4X that Eclipse maybe was a little bit better, but what's more fun than rolling dice? Planning and strategy. So I think that this does escalate the genre just a little bit.
I'd love to have seen Tim as a little kid. Hey son, you want to play a game of Sorry or Monopoly? Well, Dad, what's more fun than that? Planning.
Hey, listen, I like luck just fine. I had a few bad beats with Eclipse, so I'm a little salty on that one.
Haven't we all?
Up next for me is Expanse, the board game. This is designed by Jeff Engelstein and produced or published by WizKid Games, and that's a sad production that WizKid Games put out on this because the game is so great. Let me tell you about this game. It's really best at 4 players. This is one that is best at 4 players because it comes with the 4 factions, and the card that you're picking has these. A big central part of the game is priority order of these 4 factions, and the different cards. Some of the events on these cards only apply to specific factions. So if you don't have all 4 factions in there, you're missing out a little bit. And that's one reason this game is so high on my list. I never get to play it. I never have 4 people to play this game with. So what you're doing, it's based on this intellectual property, The Expanse, which is a fantastic series, fantastic books, and then later made into a series on Amazon. You can watch it on Amazon now. Jeff Bezos saved it from Sci-Fi Channel. Anyway, it's great. And in this board game, there's the Earth, there's Mars, there's Protogen, and then there's the Belters. So each of these sort of represents it's an akin to a modern day sort of piece of society, and you can play either one of these. So the Belters are sort of this almost like they're forced to work together because they have such austere conditions. The only way they can survive is by helping each other out. So that's in Protogen is the science, the capitalist sort of people, if you will, and they are in charge of all this tech, and they're trying to use their tech and their big money to to influence wars between Earth and Mars, and then Earth, they're the sort of the imperialist faction that have been around forever, and then Mars is the breakaway sort of, they had to colonize Mars and they had to work hard and set up this whole society themselves, and they're all working together to terraform Mars and make it livable. So that's kind of their society's whole goal, and they're very militaristic. So those are sort of the 4 factions that are involved in this game. And what you have to do if you want to buy a card, you have to pay for it with points, but then maybe that card, that action is going to give you something amazing to do. Or you can use the card for its operational points. So a lot like, was it Twilight Imperium? Not Twilight Imperium. The other war game
Twilight
with
Struggle.
Twilight Struggle. There you go. Thank you, Tim. So you can do certain actions with your operation, whether it's put more ships out or move your ships around. And then there's these scoring cards that come up too. So you pick those and you get to score the different regions. So that's all fun. And then you have these little technologies that every time there's a scoring phase that comes around, now you have a choice of a few technologies that you can pick. So based on where you're at in the game, maybe I need this technology to boost my ships, or maybe I need a little more movement, or maybe this is a one-time thing to let me put some ships out in this area. So the more I think about this game, the more I love it. They have these interesting choices at all points in the game. If you're last at one of these scoring phases, then Team Rocinante comes to your side, and they're going to help you out. So you get this ship that's a big part. That's who, the heroes of the series is this crew of the ship, the Rocinante. So they're on your team, and that gives you 4 options at the end of the scoring phase too. You're going to use which crew member you're going to use to help you out. I think that's really neat. And then you've also got the proto-molecule. People are fighting over that. If nobody has control of it, if it's tied, then it blows up, and everybody in that sector, that little section, gets wasted. I think, and the ships die, and there's proto-molecule goo all over everybody, and that wipes everything out. So this is one, the more I'm away from it, the more I miss it, and the more I want to play it. That's Expanse board game. I'm going to give a plug for Red Dust Rebellion here too. So the Expanse is kind of one of these coin light, that counterinsurgency was, what does that mean? It's just a system of card play. And then Red Dust Rebellion is coming out at some point. It's another one of these coin games that takes place on Mars. So it'll have these factions as well. So that's coming out. Maybe Red Dust Rebellion will supplant the Expanse board game. I don't think so, but who knows? We'll see. Looking forward to playing Expanse again and the arrival of Red Dust Rebellion Sunday.
Yeah, the Expanse game was surprisingly fun, especially for how it looks. And you should bring it to one of our next cons, because I'd love to get back to this one. I do remember Chris always moving into the space where I was trying to take over that proto-molecule. We tie up on people and then just lose shit, like lose troops to the void. And it was painful. We didn't do well, but
yeah,
it was his fault.
Crazy how much Tim just kept aggressing on me. It's just, he's definitely very good at that. I can't believe that we haven't played this one again. For the amount that all of us enjoyed it, we just haven't played it again. And we should. We definitely should play it at one of our next cons. Quick bit of trivia on this one. I read somewhere that the author picked the name Rocinante for 2 reasons. Once the classic Cervantes novel, Don Quixote, which is where the name originated from originally, but also there is a Rush song, Cygnus X1, in which a crew takes a ship called the Rocinante and flies it through a black hole in order to save humanity. And for the rest of the story, you'll have to listen to the song. But there you go. So Rush factors into pretty much everything.
That's very cool, Chris. Yeah, like 3 degrees of Rush. I'm thinking any part of life you can add some Rush flavor to.
Pretty much.
50% of our audience was like, that's awesome. And 50% was like, I'm never going to listen to you again now.
They just turned us off right there.
Rush is a very divisive band from my experience. All right. Well, my number 6 is the last game on my entire list that I have only played once, and I could not get it out of my mind. This is Cyclades. We played Cyclades, the Legendary Edition, when it was on Kickstarter. We played the official mod on Tabletop Simulator, and I just fell in love with this game. And I fell in love with it so much that I was like, I got to back this. But then I looked at the shipping costs on it, and I said, this is dumb. Kickstarter is dumb. Crowdfunding games is dumb. Paying all this shipping when I could just get it from my local store when it comes out is dumb. And I didn't back it. And then it just weighed on me for 3 or 4 months. And when they finally, maybe a year, and when they finally announced that they were kind of in late pledges and they were about to close late pledges, I did it. I went all in, and I've got Cyclades Legendary Edition coming sometime. I don't know. There's a lot of posts on Board Game Geek where they're working on the rule book and kind of asking for community input right now. So I'm hoping it's not too far out, but can't wait to play. This is a really interesting area control game designed by one of my favorite designers, Bruno Catala. And he tends to design like light family weight games. And I think this is an exceptional game because it is almost a family weight game. It's fairly straightforward, but it has a lot of the it has a lot of the area control trappings that you see on a lot of these Troops on a Maps games. But the way you pick your actions and what you can actually do that round is you bid on them. So there's a bidding round. And the other thing that's really cool about it, aside from that bidding for your actions, is there's this card market. So one of the actions you can get is just to like get a card. And, you know, if it's low in the market, it's free or less expensive. If you got to pay more, if they're higher up. But some of these cards will put a big monster on the board that might give you a little advantage temporarily, or they might be a one-time effect. But lots of this great, you know, mythological Greek characters with beautiful artwork, cool monsters come out to the board to change the game state. And you're trying to build up these little cities all over the board and take control. I love this game with my one play. I feel kind of dumb to have a game I only played once in my top 10. I think it's amazing. I can't wait to see where it sticks around once I get a copy and get it played some more, but I'm really, really looking forward to it.
So we're going to have to put out the BGHT drinking game if you want to take a shot every time Tim said the word dumb in that last game description. Don't blame us. Don't drive.
Was it more than once? I don't remember it saying it more than once.
Well, Tim, this is a game you haven't stopped raving about since you played it that one time. So I don't blame you for putting it so high. I can't wait to play this. I did not get to play in that game.
Oh, that's right. You weren't there that night.
I think I showed up for the podcast episode and just said some nerdy things for the last like 20 minutes of it or something. But this game looks fantastic. Can't wait to play it whenever your beautiful, well worth it Kickstarter version arrives at your place.
Dumb as it may be, this is a great game. I like this one too, and I'm also looking forward to playing this one again. So, number 5 is a game that we have already talked about tonight. It's Tapestry. Shouldn't surprise anyone that this is high on my list. It's almost unchanged from last year. I think last year it may have been 4th. This year it's at 5th, but essentially unchanged. This is another one that I would also have to say, like a couple of my recent choices, that it truly is one of the finest games of all time. I love it. I don't see how this could be a controversial choice. It's such an enjoyable game. Actually, that's the funny thing, is I can sort of see how that would be somewhat of a controversial choice, but for a different reason than, Tim, you mentioned the luck associated with the Tapestry cards. That to me, that can be a frustrating point. But, hey, it's the same thing with dice roll in any other game. The thing that surprises me that this game stays fresh is that, unlike, say, A Feast for Odin, where you have literally a million different paths you can take, here there's 4. I mean, there's 4 different ways that you can proceed, up these 4 tracks. You're always picking one of the 4, and they're the same actions every time that you play the game. And to me, that seems like it should be a recipe for boredom. I mean, that's kind of how I feel about Beyond the Sun. I played it enough times that I feel like, I see the same things over and over again. But for whatever reason, I don't feel that way about Tapestry. I can never get enough of this game. And 99% of the time that I'm playing it on BGA, where I don't even have access to the second and the third and fourth expansions. The fantasy
second and third. There's three total. Yeah.
Yeah. What's the? I'm forgetting. No, there's 4. There's
Arts
the
and Architecture.
Arts
and Architecture and Fantasies and Futures are the 2 that we don't have access to. Plans and Ploys is the one that we have access to, at least the civilizations and the cards, but not the planning piece of it. So yeah, you have a limited amount of the expansion stuff on
yeah, I guess I shouldn't have said expansions. The 4 iterations of the game: base game, plans, and blah blah blah. Anyway. Okay. So it's
Adam's bored just listening to us talk about
yeah. Anyway, great game. Love this one. Never get enough of it. Constant rotation. Amazing.
Yeah. What I think is really interesting about this is that you're right. There's the 4 tracks, and when you play this early on, it's fun. There's fun decisions, but then you start to be like, oh, I'm going to just go and do the same thing every time. But what I've actually started to find, and I think I've got a pretty good winning record lately. Been doing pretty good against Chris and some other people I play against a lot. And what I find is that partly it's because I'm pivoting a lot more than I used to, meaning like where I used to be like, oh, you always take the what do you call it, the little income building when you go to that spot. You don't get the other benefit, but a lot of the time it's the right move to take the other benefit because it might extend the round or it might get you something that you need to set you up for a tapestry card or something like that. So I think the decisions are a lot more nuanced and interesting in this game if you give it enough time. I've loved it for my first play, and Chris has too. So, favorite for us, 5 years since it came out. And again, well over 100 plays for me, probably for Chris as well.
Yep. And this is one where, Tim, you and I constantly swapping back and forth, I pretty evenly matched. And I think we're right at about 50-50 on our win percentages on this one. So you might be, I think, 1% ahead of me right now, but I'm picking that up in this game. So.
Oh, no, I'm going to keep this game too. I'm taking it.
Ain't happening.
All right. Well, my number 5 game is Gaia Project. And I think we're going to be hearing more about this one in a little bit. But this is my highest purely, resource sort of management, no hidden information game. This is one, it's just pure looking ahead and planning and how am I going to get the things done that I want to get done. All the information, all the scoring is laid out for you ahead of time. You can make your whole plan if you want to, but what you can't plan for is what the other players are going to do. And I think that's fantastic. Is Tim, look at his face, is he going to be the evil one and jump out there and take this planet that you really need before I can get to it? Is he going to build his second level building so that now every time I build a building, he's going to get charged up more and more? That's what he always does. Of course he's going to do that. He's going to get his big old building there. Now he's getting 4 power charge every time I build any kind of little dinky building near him. So you have all these choices. People say, what about Terra Mystica? What about Age of Innovation? Well, those are boring. This one has the tech track that is fantastic. That's what makes this game just leaps and bounds ahead of those other chump games. The tech track's beautiful here. You're going up, third step up, you get that 3 power charge, which is fantastic. Every time you go up, you get this little benefit, and that's a big part of your turn every time. Which track am I going to research? Am I going to build a little academy or a research facility, whatever they're called? And then which tech am I going to take? Which track am I going to go up? And I'm going to take one of the 3 lower tracks so I can, 3 lower techs so I can go up any of the tracks I want to go up. I love getting those advanced techs at the very top of the track. You get some huge points with those. The track. I love the tracks, the tech tracks here in Gaia Project. And I love the game itself. It's just decisions galore. What a great game. Gaia Project, my number 5 game of all time.
Yeah, great game, and a really interesting Euro that's got a lot of solid interaction, both positive and negative. Sometimes you want to be close to your opponents so you can get some cheaper, whatever the industrial buildings built, but also you got to beat them to some of the spaces. I want to give a shout out to the mechanism that's in this series of games, that little power, kind of the power bowls, and that was a part of the game that I was a little frustrated by when I first started playing it. I was like, it's a little confusing. You barely get to use it. Why does this even exist? But when you start to learn how to take advantage of it and use those to get bonuses and convert to the last little resource you need to do some big move on your turn, I love playing around with that puzzle. And all the asymmetric factions give you different ways to do that sometimes. So yeah, very cool game.
Yep. Great choice. I want to explain a little bit why this game is so much better than Age of Innovation, which I know is going to, Tim is going to argue with this, but the best part of Gaia Project is those technology tracks. And they completely siphoned the fun out of the technology tracks in Age of Innovation. And the other thing is too, basically it's almost like they could have done Age of Innovation first and then distilled it down to all the best stuff from that game and improved on it. And done Gaia Project, but instead they did the exact opposite. So I don't know why they did that. I don't know why they took a great game and made it less great, but I don't know. I'm not a game designer.
Well, I disagree. That's what happened, but I'm not going to argue that Gaia Project's a great game.
Good. No arguing allowed.
Oh, that's good. We don't do that around here. My number 5 is a game that I'm sure you guys won't have anything negative to say about it, and it's Lorenzo Il Magnifico. Lorenzo Il Magnifico is the top game from Simone Luciani on my list, and there was probably 8 of them. And every play of this, I just love it more and more. I loved it since my first play. Here's why I think, right? Yeah, and it's not the theme and it's not the artwork. Who cares about that? But mechanisms wise, this takes all the fun of, dice worker placement. And then the genius part is that everybody's got the same dice every round. So you don't have to worry about just getting screwed by bad rolls. Oh, you rolled a couple doubles and that messed you up. Or you rolled some low numbers this time. Everybody's dealing with the same rolls on that turn. And then it's the competition of what am I going to do with these numbers? Well, if everyone's got low numbers, well, we're not going to get any big actions, but we're all stuck with that. We got to, you got to mitigate it, but you still get those restrictions of which dice you can use where. And it's great. And then there's this tableau that you're building with some really cool production engines that you have to trigger with your dice, and this market for cards where if you're the first one to grab from a column, you get it at its cost. But if you're the second person to go in that column, then you have to pay extra for it. So it makes the worker placement part of it even more exciting, because do I want to get this other bonus that I think someone else is going to get, or do I want to get to that column before it's going to cost me an extra 3 coins? Every piece about this game is fantastic. I love it. And I played it several times this year, and it just kept getting higher and higher for me. Every time I play it, I have a great time.
I feel like calling this Simone Luciani's best game is sort of borderline blasphemous.
I don't think
did you think that Episode 1 was the best Star Wars movie?
Oh, that wasn't a rhetorical. No, but that's that's not the same as Lorenzo Il Magnifico at all.
Well, I'm going to go back to this one. I have to go back to this one to see what the heck you're talking about, Tim. To me, this game was just ho-hum. So I want to play it with you. I want you to explain to me the joy that this game brings to you, because there's got to be something there if you're talking about it and raving about it this much.
I would say that all you guys need to do is just play it with me in person, and you'll see the experience. But Chris already did, and he didn't help him at all. So I don't know.
Now I will say, we played it once in person, and it was I think it was like the last game of a game weekend where everybody's kind of like, I'm bummed out, and we're heading. I'll give it another chance, but I don't think it's going to become the number one Simone Luciani game in my mind.
We did play it again and do a review episode of it after that, Chris, and it didn't help your opinion of it as far as I can remember. But that's, you're just wrong sometimes. So
well, but yeah, not this time. All right. Well, another thing I'm not wrong about is my number 4 game, which is it's not new on my list, sort of, and I'll explain that in a second. It's Dune Imperium Uprising, designed by Paul Dennen and published by Direwolf Games. Now, I picked Dune Imperium Uprising, but I sort of combined Dune Imperium and Dune Imperium Uprising. I didn't want to list them separately on this because they are such similar games that I didn't feel like it was fair to have it taken up 2 spots. I think I would put Dune Imperium Uprising higher than straight Dune Imperium, but they're both great games. They're just similar enough. They don't deserve to be 2 different spots. Anyway, Dune Imperium and Dune Imperium Uprising are great games. We've said, we've used a lot of words explaining this and describing how much we love this game in the past. And I think that Dune Imperium Uprising actually adds a few more fun things, like the ability to use the sandworms, and we have to break down the walls to the city at the end. And there's some thematic bits like that I think elevate this one a little bit more even. So I won't say more about it other than to say this is an absolutely outstanding game. Thematic, exciting, fun, and treacherous. The ability to interact and block people, and all of those aspects of this game just make it an absolutely top-notch pick. I see this one, sticking around the list again for a long time.
Well, since you brought it up, this is my number 3 pick, and it's just straight Dune Imperium. I am not yet sold on the worms and the hooks. I don't really like the worm, and the combat gives you double the benefit for the thing. So you can get like 6 points in a single combat. That's a little, I don't know about that to me. And then what else? You have a little set collection thing for the combat too. So it makes every combat a little more valuable. I'm not totally sold on the worm and the hook thing yet. I do like the spies. The spy mechanism in Dune Imperium Uprising is super cool. I wish they had that in regular Dune Imperium. That'd be pretty neat. They do have this little spy thing in one of the expansions of Dune Imperium, but it doesn't really show up that much. So this is a great game. You've already said all the good stuff about it, but in my mind, Dune Imperium, that's my number 3. I'm skipping a spot, going out of order, Tim style. Great game, Dune Imperium, and for Chris, Dune Imperium Uprising.
Yeah, I don't know how Paul Dennen took one of the best games ever designed and then made it better with Dune Imperium Uprising, but he did. So, Adam, should I jump in? You want to save your number 3 or number 4 for number 3?
I'll go right now. I'll go number 4.
Go for it. Should take 2 in a row. It's fine.
I'll take 2.
We don't have rules around here.
No rules. This, speaking of breaking rules, I changed my order today. I had somewhere in my top 10, I had Brian Boru. So now I'm going to combine Brian Boru with the game. I'm taking Tim's monument from him here on this one too. He was going to mention this game. Arcs is my number 4 game of all time. Sarah and Tim and I got to play this the other night. It blew my mind. I can't stop thinking about this game. The card plays that people say it's very distant cousin of a trick-taking game at one point. This has really nothing to do with trick-taking, very little to do with trick-taking. It's card management, hand management. You have a hand of 6 cards in a 3-player game, and you have a certain actions that are listed. Sorry, the helicopter chopping to make it all dramatic. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but you put this card out, you take your turn, you do some stuff. As soon as you put this card out, you can declare what's going to be worth points that turn. Do you have a strong enough hand to back that up? Are you going to just decline to declare what's going to be worth points that turn? So you have all those decisions right away. Then you have these little resources. After you put that card down, you can use a little resource to do extra movement or to make your card useful for an attack as well. Or you can use it to towards one of those point scoring sections that you want to do. So it's incredibly not strategic, but tactical every round. And then at the and it's tense. Every card, every turn that you're doing is super tense. Everything matters. Everything's super impactful. It's just a slugfest to get points every single round of this game, and that intensifies as the game goes on because there's more and more points available to gain each round as the game goes on, because the 3 little point scoring chits flip and the point values get higher every time you flip it. So we had this intense game the other night of Arcs, and it sort of made me back off of Brian Boru, but Brian Boru is up there too. So Arcs, cool early, and leader games, fantastic. Everyone's getting that right. It's a super hotness. But I don't want to forget about Brian Boru too. That's a Pierre Sylvester game, art by Deidre Devara, and that is just a fantastic game too. Another sort of trick-taking game. Not really. It's just kind of a card management, remembering what people play, remembering what's out there, and it's got all these little mini games around the side too. So just a little compare and contrast. I think Brian Boru is a little bit lighter, a little bit quicker, not as heavy, not as much to think about, but the choices are just as fun too. You have more of a area control situation with these little rings around different cities in Ireland, these tone colors. The palette, I think, here is super beautiful. You have these classic just wooden circles that you're putting out and these discs. So I think the theme and the art in Brian Boru is beautiful, and it's a little more, I don't know, paciful than Arcs. Even though it is an area control and you're fighting for everything, Arcs is just a tense slugfest every round. The ability to seize the initiative and go first, guarantee yourself going first for that subsequent card play is incredibly powerful, incredibly fun. I can't stop thinking about Arcs, my number 4 game of all time.
So
yeah.
So Adam, just to be clear, what's your number 4 game? Is it Arcs or is it Brian Boru?
Do I have to pick? They're both my number 4 game.
Okay.
Some random set of trick-taking / area control on a board games, I guess. Yeah. So, 2 years ago, when we did our 2022 list, we had played Arcs, and Adam and I had played it twice. So I was willing to put it on my list because I played it at least twice, and it made my list, and it was pretty high. I was in the 20s, I think. And I loved it. But I kept hearing about all these changes they were making during development. And I was like, they're going to take what was this really streamlined, exciting game, and they're going to make it clunkier. I just know it. I was so worried. And mainly, I think it's just kind of my feel about Cole Wehrle's designs that I have had a chance to play where they tend to be just a little bit more complex than I think they need to be sometimes. I don't know. So I was worried about it. I thought they were going to take this game that I loved in a prototype and then make it worse. I was wrong. Everything that I loved about Arcs in its prototype form is still there. It's still fun and quick turns. The kind of the action selection piece really hasn't changed, but it really, improved on the way that you get these technologies or whatever they are. There's this row of market of cards that you can purchase and steal from people, and that's really cool. And then the scoring mechanism, which Adam mentioned briefly, if you are the first one to play a card and you can pick one of the scoring mechanisms, and then everyone's fighting for that scoring over the round. Really fun game, super fun. If I had played this game again in its current form before I made my top 40 list, it would have absolutely been on the list. I guarantee you it will be here next year. I can't wait to play this some more. So really, really awesome pick. And Chris, you didn't enjoy it when we played it back in the day. And I'm really curious if the improvements would actually escalate it for you. I have no idea if they will or not. You might still not like it, but I would love to play it with you again. I think it could. Maybe it was just a bad play that day. I'm not sure.
I would really like to play this one again because, for one, there's been a lot of changes. And for two, a lot has changed in my taste since we played that. I mean, that was quite a while ago. So I would definitely be open to giving this one another try with an open mind.
I want to say one more thing about Arcs, then I'll let it go. The combat system is just fantastic. You talk about chucking dice. You get one dice chuck, one dice for every ship that you have. You get to pick which dice you want to use from a set of 3, the raid dice, the little weak dice that's not going to hurt you with maybe a little bit of chance of hurting the other guy, and the mega powerful. I'm going to go for it all. I'm all in on this attack. So from those 3, you're selecting your pool of dice, one roll, and that's it. And if the other person has ships there, then you can hit yourself, sort of like the Rift Cannon in Eclipse Second Dawn. But if they don't have any other ships, then you can't get hit. So a lot of stuff to think about, incredible nuance with a single die roll in Arcs. I think the combat system is fantastic.
Yeah, surprisingly, they took one of my least favorite combat mechanisms in Root, which is similar. You roll a couple dice and, just the person who's attacking rolls the dice, and then it dictates the outcome. This does the same thing, but it is a lot more fun. It's the choices of the dice you pick and the different variables that come in. Everything about it is just more fun and more streamlined, even though, it's in a lot of ways the same as the Root combat system, but I think it's better. I think it's improved. All right, well, that comes to my number 4, and this is a new game on my list. In fact, it was a game that was published in 2023, so it's a fairly new game, but this is Nucleum. Is this a Simone Luciani game as well?
It is. That's your highest.
Okay, there's my highest. Wow,
there you go.
Simone Luciani on my list.
Whew,
this was co-designed with David
Saved by the
Turksey.
Bell.
And this is easily my favorite David Turksey game, even though I like some of his other designs, including Voidfall and Anachrony, which also made my list this year. But I think that Simone Luciani streamlined David Turksey's design here, and I think the two of them working together was a great fit. This is a route building game set in an alternate world where, it's back in the late 19th century and you're building train routes, but you're actually shipping nuclear fuel. And that's a really weird little mix on the theme. But the game's so fun. You got these little action selection tiles, and the way you take a turn is you just put one of them on top of your board, and you get both the benefits. There are usually 2 actions listed there. Or you can take one of these and turn it into one of your train tracks. So you're actually going to give up one of your action tiles, turn it into a train track, and trigger any actions that match the colors adjacent to it. So you've got some fun choices there, but there's ways to get more tiles. So you can build up a better hand of actions that you can grow over the course of the round. That's cool. It's a really fun turn every time. But my favorite part about this is that there are these little contracts you can pick up. One of the actions, you can pick up contracts. And it does 2 things. When you take the contract, you slot it into one of the 4 spaces next to your board, and it gives you a little bonus. And so sometimes the whole goal to even take a contract is just like, I really need a Nucleum or a little nuclear power uranium cube, or I need a worker. And that's one way to get it. And the only way you can clear that contract is by fulfilling it. And then when you fulfill it, maybe you get to get one of your technologies, which everybody has a unique set of techs they can develop. So there's just this great puzzle coming together. You're trying to produce enough energy in that round so that you move up this energy track on the side and can be the highest up there before a scoring triggers. And then as you move up that track, you can get different bonuses and match up for end game scoring things. So many things going on in this game. I love it though. I just had another play of it a couple weeks ago. It was actually set up on my second table in my upstairs game room for about a month and a half because a friend and I thought it was just gonna be two of us. I set it up, was ready to teach it, and then a third came in and we played something else. And so we waited and kept it set there until the day I literally left for Long Beach and the day before. And that was the last game I got played in Phoenix. Great play of it, but I've had 6 or 7 plays of this now, and it is still a blast for me. It feels like there's so much to explore and so much game here that I haven't even taken a look at there's 2 expansions now, one that's already out and one that's been announced. And I'm sure they're going to add a lot of more variety to the game. I don't even know if it will ever need it, but Nucleum is a wonderful game that's just risen to the top of my list this year. And one of the reasons why I thought 2023 was a great year for new games.
That's a fun game. And I'm going to give you a hot take right now. A lot of similarities with Brass Birmingham, the #1 game on BGG. I like this one a lot more.
Well, this one, I have a strict code that I live my life by. If I've only played a game one time, I can't put it on my list.
That's not true.
So this one, no, I have only played the one time, and hearing you talk about the mechanisms and make me want to go back to it. There's a lot going on here. So I would love to go back and explore this one some more. Nucleum, that's a fun pick, Tim.
So Adam was talking about Cole Wehrle, and speaking of Cole Wehrle, my #3 game is Gaia Project. And now you may ask what I mean by Cole Wehrle and Gaia Project. And here's what I mean by that. For those who have been listening to the show for a long time or who have gone back and listened to the back catalog, I did not like Gaia Project when it started. And I think a big part of why I didn't like Gaia Project was because of the intense asymmetry that made me feel helpless and made me feel like I needed to do a whole lot of work in order to get competent at this game to the point where I could appreciate it, which I think is a similar kind of complaint that we've heard from some, within this little group right here about Root. And I feel like there's a dividing line in there where, I'm not sure if it's that that they're both the same and that you have to learn the game well enough to be able to appreciate it, or if there really is kind of like a sweet spot that Gaia Project didn't quite, that Gaia Project landed in the sweet spot and Root didn't quite land in the sweet spot. But I definitely feel like one of the highlights for me now about Gaia Project is that intense asymmetry amongst the factions and how you are playing a slightly different game, or at least doing things in a slightly different way depending on your faction, as opposed to Root where you truly are playing entirely different games. But in any event, for whatever the reason is, Gaia Project has matured for me into one of my absolute favorite games, and I'm thrilled because it's one that we all enjoy now, and all 3 of us play it together, and I still lose pretty much every time. But I really do enjoy this game, and I'm glad that I got turned around on this one because it is a fun experience whenever we play.
Yeah, great pick, Chris. I already talked about, I'm going to say again what I've said before, that I think each faction in this game teaches you a little bit about different things you can do in this. Almost a tutorial for a different section of the game. The Nevlas, I think, really focus in on using your power in those 3 little buckets. I think that they're worth double power, so you really want to manage that well and be shooting that stuff around, getting it in your 3rd bin so you can take all those actions before everybody else gets to them. That's pretty neat. And then there's this wacky faction, right? Like I think the Ambas, they can switch their big pyramid with one of their little mines and fly that thing around. So you can be setting up with federations everywhere on the map. And then the red guys, they make this little snake, this blob across the board, and they can just keep federating every time they get 7 strength worth of buildings in the same. So yeah, I think this game is the fantastic way the different factions sort of strengthen how you play the game overall. And to touch on the difference between Root, I think to be good at Root, you have to know how each of those other factions play in the game. You really have to know what they can do and what they can't do. Where in Gaia Project, you just have to kind of look over, and can Tim or Chris steal this thing before I can get to it? Do I have to worry about that right now? It looks like they can't. So I'm going to do this action first because I know this other action I want to do is safe for another turn or 2 before I have to worry about it. Where in Root, I have no idea. I'm not going to steal their player board and read an essay about, what's critical and what's not that these little cats can do, and why these Apiary crows are all angry at each other and fighting for new bosses and stuff. So that's why a Gaia project shines a lot more for me than does Root.
Well, I appreciate your comparison of Gaia Project to Root a lot more than I appreciate your comparison of Gaia Project to Age of Innovation. I'm on board with you, Adam, that Gaia Project is better than Root.
Okay, I already talked about my number 3, Dune Imperium. Just to remind everybody, it's my number 3 game of all time. It's fantastic. And I'm talking about Dune Imperium OG, not Uprising and Hooks and Worms.
All right. Well, my number 3, it was my number 1 last year, but it's been high on my list every year. And again, the game you guys haven't played a lot, so I know you don't have the same passion I do for it, but that's Everdell, a game that I think, again, this is a game that has a lot more depth than most people give it credit for. They say, oh, it's got the big, dumb cardboard tree and a bunch of luck in it. Well, you're wrong. I will beat you at this game so bad because there's a lot of strategy in this game.
Sounds great.
I played this a ton. My wife and I played a lot, but I played it just tons and tons with and without most of the expansions. And the game is just always fun for me. I wish some of my other friends, aside from just my wife, loved it as much as I did, because I would love to get some competitive. This is actually a game that does shine at 3 or 4 players in some interesting ways, because there is some decent and interesting interaction that can occur with it, and it's really fun. I've had a couple 4-player games with it that were fantastic, and the games, the turns are quick, so this is not a game where there's a lot of downtime or anything. So just a fun game. I think Andrew Bosley's best art that he's ever done. I think he's still doing great art. In fact, we just played Skyrise yesterday or a couple days ago, and I was commenting how I think Everdell was one of his earliest projects, and I feel like he put more detail into the card art, and I think it pays off. I think he's so busy now that he puts a bit less detail in some of his art, and it's still great. It's charming, but it just doesn't quite have that level of just magic that the Everdell art does. So Everdell, from production to gameplay to mechanisms, is still a top tier game for me.
I'd love to try this one again. I haven't played it in a long, long time, but I would like to try it again. I also want to, when we do the movie poster of this episode, that's going to be the quote at the top. I will beat you at this game so bad, Tim.
This is one I've played once, and we all know my strict code of ethics that I live my life by. But no, I need to go back to this one. I don't know enough to know the nuance or see the details in this one like Tim does. And, this one I feel like does have a lot of that exploration where you get the joy the more you play, and you see these little combos there work together. So fun pick here that I haven't got back to, Everdell.
So I think that gets us to the penultimate choice on our list tonight, the number 2 game. And for me, it's a game that was on my list last year, and it has jumped pretty considerably. It was in the 10 to 20 or 11 to 20 list, and this year it is all the way up at number 2. It's Distilled, designed by Dave Beck and published by Paverson Games. This is a game that has just continued to go up and up for me. I deeply appreciate this game, and not just because of the theme. I like the theme a lot, but there's a lot about this game that I find deeply satisfying. And recently I've gotten a chance to really indulge in this game quite a bit more because it's been added to BGA, which is a lot of fun. It's a game that does pretty well playing it async, and we're letting you really try a whole lot of different things that you might not otherwise get a chance to. Try different recipes on different recipe cards, because you can get the game played just more often than you can if you're playing it live. Or at least for me, that's how it is. And recently, or fairly recently, within the last year, I also got a couple of the expansions, the Africa and Middle East, which I talked about, and the Cask Strength expansion, which I also talked about a little bit. And I would like to get those out and play sometime with you guys, because I know that you enjoy this game as well. And we haven't had a chance to play those expansions yet. Adds a little bit more stuff to the game, a little bit more fun, a little bit more complexity. Lot of fun stuff happening here. And on top of that, just a delightful theme. I don't love the artwork on this one as much as I do in some games, but the idea of building out your distillery, picking the things that you want to distill in there, and most of all, I always point to the mechanism of shuffling up your deck of all your ingredients and pulling off the heads and the tails, and hoping that you end up pulling out the right cards to leave yourself with a delicious brew rather than a bucket of vodka or moonshine, which not that, there's not a place for vodka and moonshine, but it's not what you want to generally make in this game. But lots of fun. I'm looking forward to seeing what else comes out in this game over the years in terms of expansions, if there are any more that do come out. Distilled, number 2 on my list this year.
Fun pick, Chris. It's been a delight to go back to this one on Board Game Arena. I hadn't played it since I think the play in Portland?
Sedona, I think.
Sedona. There you go. So yeah, that first game back, I was like, I don't know what the heck is going on here. I forget what to do. But then the second game, I'm starting to figure it out a little more, and it's just neat. A lot of cool stuff going on. I like the literal flavor text on the flavor cards as you're aging your spirits in these barrels or clay pots or whatever you're doing. And then it got witty. It's got a nice sense of humor to it. The cards themselves have a nice little blurb on each of them about whatever some such thing or where these little things are from. And the art is pretty cool. The little star anise and the little the different sorts of flavorings, fruits, spices that you have for the different drinks. It's pretty neat. Distilled.
Yeah, I really like Distilled. It ended up number 60 on my list, so we haven't talked about it in these recent episodes. It's funny, when this came out on Board Game Arena in beta, I got like 5 invites on the same day. And so I was just playing so many games for like 2 weeks. I never knew which game I was in or what I was trying to make or anything like that. I'm down to 1 game running at one time right now with you guys, and I'm having a great time with it. I like this game a lot. I think it's more fun in person, but I love that shuffling and taking the head or tail off and the surprise of what you got. So many times I felt like, okay, I'm set up. The only way I could lose is if these 2 cards come off and then they get pulled out, and that's my lot in life. But yeah, great game. Distilled is fantastic. Dave Beck, the designer of this, has a new game out that I think is on Kickstarter or coming to Kickstarter really soon, called Luthier, about making classical music instruments. And it looks really neat. And just, he did some really cool things with the design of Distilled. So I definitely want to take a look at his next game as well.
My number 2 game of all time is one Chris already talked about. This is Eclipse, Second Dawn for the Galaxy. Chris said tons of beautiful stuff about it. I think one of my favorite things is the action selection and how that ties into your economy. So what you're doing is you're sliding over one of these little translucent circles from your right side, from your, Civ board or whatever, over to the action that you want to do. And there's associated cost underneath that. It doesn't go linear. Sometimes it's free. Sometimes it goes up by 2. So now it's up by 3. Now it's up by another 3. So you're paying an increasing amount the more actions you want to take. And do you have enough money in the bank to be able to pay for those? So that's just a smooth economy right there. The text that you're building up over and the way those become worth points, and they get cheaper if you buy the cheaper ones first. The more expensive ones get cheaper as you go on. I think that's fantastic. And then the ship building is fun too. That's going to tell you which dice you're going to get to roll and how much shields, how much damage you can take before your ships are gone. And that's going to let you mitigate any sort of bad dice rolls. So you want to plan ahead, unlike Tim in this one. He's like, oh, I got a ship. I'm going to go shoot these guys, get blown up. No, Tim, you got to take your time, build up a ship, have something that's not going to get blown out and turn into space junk in 2 seconds. Build up a decent, solid ship before you start trying to fight these ancients that are they're pretty BA. They're hanging out and sit there not bugging anyone. You go and try to fight them, they're going to waste you if you're not ready. So you got to be ready for these guys, Tim.
I'm the Leo Jenkins of Eclipse.
Leroy Jenkins? Yeah,
Leroy Jenkins.
Leroy running in there. You said you like to plan, but you don't do it in this game. So what's going on? Eclipse Second Dawn for the Galaxy. My number 2 game of all time.
Great choice.
Great choice. Yeah, even as much as I complain about it, it's a fun game. I do like to play it. All right, my number 2 you guys talked about just recently, Dune Imperium. And I would just rank Uprising as a standalone expansion as it is, which means that it's all part of the same game system, and just included in the ranking here.
It's like a Supreme Court cop-out right there, too.
I can tell you, so I only played Uprising one time, and I barely remember exactly how it felt or what was different about it. But I remember after playing it thinking that it was the best Dune I'd ever played. So I think with more plays of it, it will probably be my favorite way. But I love playing with all the expansions in the base game, with the Rise of Ix and the Immortality expansions together. That provides such an interesting mix of different directions you can go down. So I wonder if Uprising wouldn't add that kind of variety after many plays. In any case, I love it. This was the first game we played when we got together in Big Bear. I love when you can sit down with a group of friends that everybody knows the game well. Everyone is in there being competitive, and you can just focus on your strategy and not teach anything. and this is one of my go-to games for that. Dune Imperium's fantastic. It's an amazing. For the first time, I actually read the novel recently too, which is definitely a bit dated. I think, to be honest, the recent movie treatments are better, and they edit it to the point where it's actually a better story as is. But I'm excited to explore that more, and it's cool that theme and that IP is on this really remarkable Euro game that has some crazy combat in it.
I do believe that gets us the number one. What will be at the top of our lists this year? I think you guys are going to be a little bit surprised about my number one game. It's one that it's been on my list now for as long as we've been doing these lists, and it's actually one of the kind of first games that I ever went out and bought, and it is a game that never got higher than 30 on my list before, but now it's at number one. So what's up with that? It's a game that I've always loved. I've always really enjoyed it, but it felt too slight to me to really justify being a number one game on my list. But after playing it multiple times since, playing it in a very particular way that we play it, in addition to playing it with other people in, just kind of the standard way, what I have come to conclude is that this game is just like a way of mainlining fun. It is just like a massive delivery system for fun. And that is Pan Am, designed by the crew at Prospero Hall and published by, I think Adam said last time, not Funko Games, Defuncto Games, because they don't actually exist anymore. But when I really sat down and thought about it, I have not had a game of Pan Am that hasn't been one of my most fun gaming experiences. There is so much theme packed into this game. There is so much fun. There is so much ambiance. And when I talked about our way of playing it, it's like with a classic cocktail and the playlists and, just kind of goofing around and, making the funny voices when you're reading the flavor text on the event cards. All of that stuff is great, and I love it, and that really kind of bumps this one up for me. But it's not necessary. You can still have a great time playing this game. It is a simple, intuitive rule set that at the same time creates chunky decision spaces that are always fun, and there's an intense player competition, intense player interaction that you can really just get in people's faces. I mean, the number of time that I've waited till someone was clearly going for a certain route, jumped in front of them and grabbed it out from underneath them, and then the swearing that ensues. I mean, this game is just, it is an absolute blast. And I feel like this year I've kind of gotten to the point where I can say, this may not be the heaviest or most intense board game that's ever been designed, but doggone it, there is rarely anything that I have more fun playing than Pan Am. So I got to put it at number one.
Chris, I can't argue that. Hearing you talk about it, thinking about our previous plays of it, my most recent plays of it, this game is excellent. Everything about it, so easy. The workers, the way those get bumped out, the incredibly unique worker placement mechanisms, Tim, that you're muted and you can't respond. I don't know why, if you even know you're muted. It's just excellent. So great pick, and I can't argue that for number one pick, Chris. Well done.
If you don't believe Chris and Adam about how fun this game is, go back. If you're a Patreon supporter, and you can go back to some videos we posted, a kind of a video diary of our Big Bear Con trip, and watch the second one of those. You'll get to see some shots of gameplay in action and how much fun we were having with it. So yeah, Pan Am is great. It was on my list too, just a bit higher up for me, but always a fun time playing this one.
My number one.
I almost stole that one from you, Adam. I was about to sneak in
did.
there.
I won't let you. I'm not going to take that one. My number one game of all time this year has supplanted Eclipse as the number one 4X game for me. I'm talking about Fractal Beyond the Void.
Wow.
It is excellent to me. The scoring, the way it does the scoring is really neat. I really enjoy the combat here as well. The card play is super fun to me, how you have to have the compositions of troops and ships, and that makes you stronger as you go in. That's incredibly novel to me. I think the scoring, I talked about that a little bit, is pretty novel too, with the dice and how you have to meet these certain criteria. It's not just go waste a bunch of people in outer space. It's make the smart choice. And it's not just go, jump into this region. I tried that. You tried that against him. I tried that against him. And he said, look at your guys' faces. I'm going to smash you guys. I don't like anybody's face. I'm going to destroy everybody. This game does have rough edges. The rulebook is a little rough to find what you need to know. And it has some little edge cases like, oh, what? I can't believe this thing. How does that shake down? Well, I'm not quite sure. Let me go check on some stuff. So it has some grit to it, which I find I kind of enjoy with this game. Instead of being disgusted at it, I'm like, you know what? That's kind of neat how this plays out. The little techs are pretty neat on this one too, how you can add those, and those either help your military or they'll help you colonize different regions. We're going through this little campaign. I've never done this campaign before, and Tim and I did a first step of that, and it was pretty neat. Just a little half game really is what you have, and then it takes you down this storyline. It's got a beautiful production that they had to actually cut back on a little bit to save some money to put this game out. First time publisher, I believe, maybe second time publisher. Let me pull up the stuff here. But anyway, before I pull up the stuff, I'll talk about that in a second. Fractal. It's my number one right now. Incredible 4X game. Just some novel things going on, and I am having a great time playing it.
Yeah, we played this in Big Bear, and I was surprised by how much I enjoyed this game. It's the final version of it. And so right after we made our top 40 list, I did get a chance to play this with Adam, as he mentioned, started the campaign with it. And I really liked it. And I suspect maybe it would have made my list if we'd gotten through that second game. Really fun. My favorite parts of it is two things. One is that the scoring mechanism, like Adam mentioned, where every game you're going to have a little bit of different kind of goals you have to go for, and then a second set reveals themselves halfway through the game, just slightly. Some of them are going to be similar or whatever, but I like that kind of like, okay, I've got to really focus on something else this game. The other thing I like is when you explore, you go to a space and you flip this little card over that was on it, and they usually have conditions to meet. It might have certain types of troops in there, or sacrifice a troop or whatever. So I feel like, okay, I got another little goal to go. I got to move some ships over there so I can meet that condition and colonize that planet. So I really like some of the stuff that's going in here. I think you're right. It's a tad clunky, like it's not Eclipse streamlined perfection, but it's great. It's a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to continuing the campaign here. We have so many great games we're trying to get played, and the time's going by fast. So I don't know how much we'll get through it, but looking forward to more Fractal. Great game.
Yeah, that is a bold move, Adam, calling that the best 4X game. I went back to look, and that's currently sitting, or Eclipse is currently sitting at number 18 on the BGG all-time list. So that's pretty big shoes to fill. But then again, I said that I like Nucleum better than Brass Birmingham. So I can respect your choice. It's bold.
We are living on the edge over here.
Yeah, we are.
Board game hot takes, yeah. So the designers here, Jan Hilaire, Romain Lesiuk, and Bernardo Ripa. And the art here, I have to mention Tom Lopez. I think the art is beautiful on these cards and on the player boards. It's a beautiful game to look at. Nice production, a lot of small text going on here. Yep. Another thing that's rough about the game, but whatever, it's fantastic. Fractal.
All right. Well, my number one is a tiny bit of a cheat in that I actually have two games here, and these two games were both in my ranking option, my ranking engine as separate games, and they ended up as my number 1 and 2, and that is So 1.5 is Gaia Project. Number 1 is Age of Innovation. They share a lot of DNA, so I didn't want to take up 2 spots on my list. So you're welcome, everybody. You actually got 51 games on my list in this series. Gaia Project has been a favorite of mine since I first opened the box 4 or 5 years ago, and Age of Innovation just makes it better. And I'll tell you why, because these guys are talking about these tech tracks, which are fine. They're great. Although they're tough, right? The tech tracks have always been like the promise was there, but it's so hard to move up them and get anything out of them.
Not if you're really good. I mean,
if you know what you're doing.
Yeah, if you know what you're doing, just do it.
But what I like about Age of Innovation is a couple things. One is just the drastic variety that comes in. It's not that you have 16 civilizations. It's that you have 150 civilizations because you mix your land type with the special power of your civilization with your starting resources. And so it's a different combo you're putting together every time. And the end game scoring is done in a way that you're not just going for, these two types of scoring you're going for. What you're really doing is trying to build up these books and buying one of these, like these knowledge tiles or whatever they're called, that you can trigger a big end game scoring on, and you can get a couple of those. There's ways to spend these books and these people, which are a new type of resource. Both of them can be used kind of like power things, where you can use them to get these once per round benefits, but you can also spend them to get the books to go up these academy tracks. And I'll tell you why those are still really cool. And the books, as I mentioned, to buy these technology tiles. When you build the academies, the things that would normally give you the tech in Gaia project, here you not only get a tech, but you also get some books and or a combination of movements up these tracks, these academy tracks, which will trigger power movement, which can be really exciting. So that adds a little bit to the game. You're racing up those tracks. You can get some income at the top of it. You can beat other people at the top of it. And then that's a big part of scoring too, is just being highest up those tracks. So there's a little bit of a fight for that, which is more fun every time I play this game. Age of Innovation, it's fantastic to me. I love when we reviewed this. Of course, we played it on Tabletop Simulator, like we have to play a lot of games. And the rule book, I read the finished rule book, and I was like, this production looks kind of old school, outdated. I was wrong. This is a beautiful production. It's huge board laid on the table, tons of color. Components are fun to handle. You're slotting all these things into your dual layer player board to kind of build out your civilization, and taking these little discs and upgrading the territory. So like you're turning your swamp into a forest and your forest into a mountain or whatever by swapping them out with these little discs. And it's awesome. Anyway, Gaia Project, also awesome. As I mentioned, these guys were neck and neck. These two games were neck and neck. I love them both. And I've got Gaia Project. It will not leave my collection. Age of Innovation is going to be joining it. I think they're different enough where some days I want to play one, some days I want to play the other. They're both on Board Game Arena right now, and I'm still enjoying playing both of them anytime I can get a game in. So Gaia Project / Age of Innovation is my number 2 games of all time.
Adam, please address this.
Well, Tim, nice job with your little speech there. You were fighting some skeptical looks from Chris and I during the whole thing, so well done getting through that. Yeah, Age of Innovation, it's fine. Yeah, exciting getting books in people at the same time.
Yay.
It's a fun. Nothing too much against it other than I just prefer Gaia Project, but both fantastic games. Can't blame you with picking one over the others. It comes down to preference.
Yeah.
It takes all kinds, man. It does.
All right. Well, that's the top of our list. Top 10 games of all time. We just made it through our top 50. Any final thoughts from you guys?
Just, it's so much fun doing this, and I'm interested to think about this again next year in light of the comment that you talked about at the beginning of the episode, Tim, from the listener. I would like to do that. I hope we remember to do that next year because it's a cool idea, and even if it doesn't necessarily change how we pick our games, I think it would be an interesting bit of commentary to add in there about how the choices might actually fare in a true list of how does this historically fit into the sort of pantheon of board games. So cool idea. I like that.
I will say, Chris, Adam, one quick thing, Chris, is that many people told me on social media and responding to our YouTube video and stuff, is that they really wish they got to hear some of your favorite lighter games too, because that was one of the caveats you made at the beginning of the series, was that you left out anything that wasn't like a game night full game, where we didn't. And so think about that. If you're sitting there with Star Realms versus Eclipse, and one of them is going to go away forever, well, now you get to make a choice. It gives you a reason to choose one over the other. So I would really be interested to see if we can come back and do that next year and get to hear some more. I don't think your list would change that much, to be honest, because I don't think you like most light games that much, but I know there'd be a couple that would probably be swapped in.
Yeah, good feedback.
Yeah, I'm interested to do the list already next year with that in mind. Games I can't live without. That's kind of the criteria I'm already leaning towards next year. It'll be fun to see how that shakes things up. Always have a blast talking about these games with you guys and why or why not they make the top whatever. It's also fun to see like what I left out. I already know there's a few games I left out. Skyrise is one I don't think made my list. I think that would be on here next year somewhere. And then we'll see where Arcs. I already put that on my list. She didn't put that Arcs on my list. Looking forward to all the games coming out next year, the ones that I have delivering, see where those end up. It's fun to see what games from the last year make it to the list this year. So looking forward to new games for 2024, 2025.
Yeah, let's get lots of new games played. Skyrise, by the way, yeah, agreed. That was a fantastic game, and if I get one more play of it, in, it probably will make my list next year. I'm gonna call out Adam here a little bit. I'm not gonna name the game, but we were talking about games to give away to Patreon supporters, and he throws out the name of a game. I was like, that was just on your top 30 list. He's like, I changed my mind. So. Anyway, it does change. It's always fun to revisit, though, and just fun to talk about games. And this is a way to talk about some of our favorite games of all time. Thank you, everybody, for joining us through the series this week, especially. We love the conversation. Hopefully, you did too. If you enjoy the show, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Please like and subscribe on YouTube. If you're enjoying this video series, if we get enough interest, maybe we'll keep making our podcast in a video format as well for those of you that prefer watching. And we'll keep getting dressed up for you. Until next week, take care, everybody.
Good night, all.
Bye-bye.